Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We know the story. It was the first time since 2008 that we not only had a number one versus number two, but a number one versus number two within state borders. The last time it happened, Bruce Pearl was the head coach of the Tennessee Vols. Now he's the head coach at Auburn. They face number two Alabama. And let me say this. I think there's a very easy way to break this thing down. If you had any question at all who was the number one team in college basketball, I don't think there is much of a question anymore as the Auburn Tigers go into Coleman Coliseum on the road, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They get a 94-85 win. And I don't know what else to say other than, we are number one. It's like the Nelly song. 2 is not a winner. 3, nobody remembers. Well, Auburn ain't quite there yet. But listen, this team is awesome. They're the best team in college basketball. Let's dive quickly into this game. So first off, I think the thing that really kind of stands out about this game is that, listen, it's a credit to Alabama that they stayed in it. But was there ever a moment in this game where you really felt like Alabama was going to win? Now, listen, they made runs. They played well at times. But was there ever a moment that you were like, oh, Alabama's going to take this thing down? No, Auburn from the jump was in control, right? If you watch this game, they go up 9-2 right out of the gate. Alabama makes a little bit of a run. Then they're up 26-19, 7-point lead about midway through the first half. Alabama makes a run. Then you look up, Auburn's back up by 9 at halftime. They're up by as many as 14 in the second half. And then once Alabama cuts the lead to or ties up the game at 68, Auburn goes on another run, takes control, and wins that game. And so when I look at that game, you know what the biggest story to me is? It is everything that happened after 68-68, and it shows why just Auburn is so freaking good, okay? One of the things we talked about going into this game, that both these teams have so many guys that can beat you on any given night, but Auburn really does have like 4 or 5 guys that can take over the game, right? It's funny. I was thinking about this, right? Just go back to the 68-68 moment in time. What was about 6, 7, 8 minutes to go in the game? Jani Broome, All-American, maybe the National Player of the Year. Goes down. It looks like he re-aggravates the ankle injury. They actually play about 2 minutes with him on the court before they got to a TV timeout. They sub him out. It's 68-68. Auburn's down there All-American. What are they going to do? Oh, my God, what's going to happen? Chad Baker-Mazara, second leading scorer, rips off 5 straight. They take a 5-point lead. Then Chad Baker-Mazara picks up his 4th foul, goes to the bench. What ends up happening? Tahad Pettiford takes over. I think he scored 5 straight, 4 straight, something like that. And all of a sudden, not only does Auburn have control, but it was 3 different guys that essentially took over that game. And so when I look at Auburn, that is to me the difference, and that is to me the difference in them and basically everybody else in college basketball. I think Alabama is one of the exceptions. And the crazy part is Alabama was at home, had every advantage, and Auburn still pulled away from them late. But why I've always liked this Auburn team, they got 3 or 4 guys that can just get you 20, 25 on any given night. And believe me, we all watch a lot of college basketball. There aren't a lot of teams that have 2 guys, that have 3 guys. Auburn has 4 or 5. You talk about Jani Broome taking over games. Chad Baker-Mazara, again, Saturday, Tahad Pettiford. Tahad Pettiford's crazy because his best games have generally been against the best competition. Took over the Houston game. Took over this game at various points. And so that is the bottom line. This team has so many guys that can beat you. But 2, beyond that, you know what else this game really just solidified to me? Auburn's the best team in the country. And I just go, listen, we've been talking about this for, I think, really since probably like November when the season started. They beat Houston on that Saturday night. And I'm kind of just like, that's a really good team. And then, oh, by the way, they kind of go through Maui. They destroy everybody in Maui, whatever. And I think even if there was any skepticism, it's basically been eliminated since the start of SEC play, right? And I remember starting this conversation probably about 6 weeks ago when SEC play started, when they opened up and they're beating really good teams by a lot of points. I said, this is the best team in college basketball. And every time that you even insinuate that they're by far the best team, that's what I think. I think they're by far. When you go on the road to Alabama and you dominate, and it's not, I don't want to say it wasn't close because it was close, But every single time Alabama cuts it close, you just pull right back away. You're the best team in college basketball. And it's so funny because every time I say stuff like this, I get two responses that are so stupid. Well, really three. One is, well, they lost to Duke. Okay, cool. They lost to Duke. First of all, the game was at Duke. As best I can tell, I don't think they're playing NCAA tournament games. The Final Four is at a Cameron Indoor Arena this year, okay? And on top of that, we've talked about it. Yes, it's a credit to Duke. They won that game. Nobody's going to take it away from them. Duke also had a dude named Isaiah Evans who hadn't played all year, essentially. Basically hadn't played in like 3 or 4 games going into that game. Come off the bench and score 18 points in the first half. And that ended up being the difference. Yes, it was one game. Yes, you could say the NCAA tournament is one game. I don't think a random dude that wasn't on the scouting report is getting 18 against you if you play them again. So don't tell me that just because Duke beat them, they're definitively the better team. I mean, Clemson beat Duke. Does that mean that Clemson's better than Duke? I don't think so. So that's one. Two, listen, I think we got to start talking about Auburn as a potentially historically great team. And again, when I say that, it becomes, what about UConn last year? What about UConn last year? They were awesome. 37-3. We've talked about them a million times. They lost one game at full strength. They were historically great. But just because UConn was historically great doesn't mean that Auburn can't be as well. And as a matter of fact, producer Matt, pop up the graphic that you spent all this time making this morning because it looks awesome. This is the current top 10 in college basketball, okay? So Auburn's number 1. Beat number 2, Alabama. Number 3, they lost to Duke. Number 4, they lost to Florida. Number 5, they beat Tennessee. Number 6, they beat Houston. Number 7, they beat Purdue. They have not played number 8, Texas A&M, although they will, and I promise you they're going to win that game. Number 9, they beat St. John's. Iowa State, number 10, they also beat. So right now, we are talking about a team that has beaten 5 teams in the current top 25. Now, the top 25 will change. If you're listening on Monday, it'll be a little bit different. But 5 teams in the top 10. They've beaten 10 teams in the top 25. And listen, I know they lost to Duke. They played really well. I would argue that in 26 games now, against the toughest schedule of college basketball, they've had one bad day. That was against Florida at home. And by the way, you watch the bracket show like I did. Florida is projected to be a number 1 seed right now with the way that they're playing. And so to me, I just think, listen, I think sometimes fans, whether it's your personal bias, maybe you're an Alabama fan, a Tennessee fan, even a UConn fan doesn't want to give credit that there's another really good team a year after you were really good. But I just think this is one of those deals. Let's just embrace greatness. Like, it's okay to just be like, Auburn has the chance to be historically great, okay? Like, again, I know it looks a little bit different. I know they don't have a ton of NBA players, but they have 3, 4, 5 guys that can take over games. Look at the bottom line. The bottom line of this scroller right now. They have 14 quad 1 wins. They're doing this against one of the toughest schedules that has ever been played in the regular season, according to all the metrics. And so I'm just sitting here telling you, don't be afraid of greatness. Don't be afraid to embrace this team. Yes, they are going to have to continue to win at a really high level and then win a national championship to be considered an all-time great team. But you can't determine what a team's going to be, in end of March, first week of April. Right now, as I'm recording, it's February 16th, and we have not seen very many teams do what this team has done through February 16th of any college basketball season I don't want to say in recent history because UConn did it last year. But again, this team, this schedule, the way they challenge themselves out of conference, Bruce Pearl talked about it in the offseason. He's like, I think I might have overscheduled Maui Invitational, Houston on a neutral, Purdue on a neutral, Ohio State on a neutral, Duke on the road. SEC is going to be tough. We didn't even know how tough it was going to be. But just enjoy this and embrace it because we just don't see teams do what this team is doing. Not saying they're better than UConn last year. Not saying they're better than the great Duke teams or whatever. But they're the best team in college basketball. At this point, I would be shocked if they were not at the Final Four. We know, by the way, that the stakes on Saturday were high because both Alabama and Auburn want that 1 seed in the South where you would play your Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games in Atlanta. But it is just so tough to see this team losing.